Hello, my name is Sam Love, and this presentation is on the documentary Walled Off, directed by Vinar Fusa. I chose this documentary because it discusses and spreads awareness of important current issues like the ongoing genocide in Palestine. Since America has been an ally to Israel for a long time, American media shows a very one sided perspective of what is going on there, leading many Americans to believe that Israel is in the right in regards to its actions against Palestinians. As its central thesis, this documentary addresses that and takes a deep dive into the history of the Israeli occupation of Palestine, showing just how oppressed Palestinians truly are through the use of evidence like testimony and objects and artifacts. The first type of evidence the documentary uses that I'll be going over is testimony. This testimony is provided by a variety of different people, including residents of the occupied West Bank, ex-Israeli soldiers, and politicians around the world. Residents of the occupied West Bank have described how they are treated by Israeli soldiers and how the Israeli government forces them to live. One resident, Safar Halata, shown here in the image to the left and the director of the Palestinian Museum, says, "I didn't have a childhood. It was like all bombs, curfews. I did not have a normal life." Another resident, Wissam Salsah, manager of the Waldorf Hotel, says that Palestinians, quote, always have a shortage of water in Bethlehem. Sometimes houses stay for weeks without water coming to their home. This testimony is credible because these individuals have experienced firsthand what living in occupied Palestine is like, so their arguments have strong ethos. On the other side of the situation, ex-Israeli soldiers turned whistleblowers describe what their jobs were like and how Palestinians are treated by the IDF. Some of them are shown here in the image to the right, speaking out against Israel's injustice as part of an activist organization known as Breaking the Silence. One such ex-soldier, Iran Afradi, says, "I think in a very rapid pace I realized that my job is actually to maintain an apartheid system. Very early on, I understood that the rights that the Jewish settlers have are not the rights that the Palestinians have. I understood that I cannot touch a Jewish settler if he is attacking a Palestinian." This testimony is credible because Iran has also experienced life in the West Bank firsthand, and because the testimony is reluctant since it is an admission that Iran was in the wrong, and it is not in Iran's best interest to speak out against Israel. Even more testimony about the oppression in the West Bank comes from Irish politician Richard Barrett at a meeting of the Joint Committee on Foreign Affairs and Trade, where he says, "I lived there. It was apartheid. It was racism. It was endemic. I was shocked within weeks of living there to see how you treated the Palestinian people." This testimony is credible because Richard Barrett, too, has personally experienced life in the occupied West Bank. A second type of evidence used in the documentary is objects and artifacts. One of these objects is a broken camera, shown here in the image to the top left, that was one of 5 cameras destroyed by Israeli soldiers to stop a documentary of what was happening in Palestine from getting out to the public. This is credible because it is physical proof that Israeli soldiers attack people for filming what is going on, and serves to back up the footage this documentary shows of Israeli soldiers assaulting members of the press. Photographs are another type of object presented as evidence of the oppression Palestinians face. These depict things such as roads segregated into 2 parts, one side for Jews and the other for non-Jews, Palestinians being forced off of their land in 1948, children being blindfolded and dragged away by Israeli soldiers, and numerous massacres and dead bodies. The image displayed here on the bottom left is one such photo, which shows Palestinians being kicked off their land. These photos are credible because they show exactly what has happened and is happening in Palestine with no room for doubt, and use pathos well to evoke emotions, as one can see the suffering Palestinians have had to go through. A third object shown in the documentary, pictured here in the image on the right, is a water tank full of bullet holes that provides proof of the claim that Israeli soldiers shoot Palestinian water tanks to deplete their already incredibly limited water supply. This is credible because it is evidence that Palestinians are telling the truth about the actions of the Israeli occupation forces. In conclusion, the documentary Walled Off has an abundance of evidence which shows that Palestinians face ample oppression and injustice. The 2 strongest forms of evidence shown are testimony and objects and artifacts. They are used in numerous instances in the documentary, and the credibility of this evidence makes the documentary's claims very persuasive to the audience. Despite the oppression Palestinians face, the documentary shows their resilience and continued hope and effort for a better world. Pictured here is a Palestinian hoisting a Palestinian flag above the border wall in an act of resistance, as public displays of Palestinian flags are banned on the occupied West Bank. Images like this highlight the continuous fight for a free Palestine and encourage others not to give up hope. That concludes my documentary. Here are my references.